Hello and welcome. You are listening to the Gay with God podcast, a safe place for us to share our stories and support one another. How long did we know? What challenges did we face? Did we lose our faith? When did we find our way back home? Or are we still searching? The stories you hear on this podcast will melt your heart and strengthen your belief that in God, all things are possible, and you can be authentically gay with the God of your understanding. I am your host, Midge Noble, and I am very honored that you are here. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Gay with God podcast. I am your host, Midge Noble, and I have an amazing guest. I'm so excited that Abe Gurko has decided to come on to the Gay with God podcast. We just met. We were in a Defense of Democracy readout. He had a readout. And then later in the week, I had a readout, but I joined his, and I was so excited to meet him. He's an amazing guy. And so I'm so thankful that we met, Abe, and I'm so thankful that you're here. Let me tell you a little bit about him. So when Abe Gurko packed his bags and moved from New York City to Hollywood, he wasn't leaving a career in the fashion industry to chase the usual dream of becoming a movie star. He says, I wanted to be a mechanic to the machine called celebrity. He cultivated his skill set working with arguably the coolest woman in Hollywood, Carrie Fisher, and acquired an intimate knowledge of the writing process and had a front row seat to the business of show. His first documentary, Louder, The Soundtrack of Change, airs on Max October 17th, and he is in development on Wolf's Song, a recently discovered piece of music written in a concentration camp as a song of resistance to the Nazis. That is being transformed into a clarion call for social justice today. Abe is living happily ever after in La La Land with his husband, Shlomi, and their dog, Alfie. Abe, welcome to the Gay with God house.
And that is me, gay with God.
Yay! Well,
Again.
again, that's right. Kind of like me. Yay? Yay. Well, Abe, tell us your story.
Well, it all started so many years ago. I started out as a kid in a tiny little blue-collar town in Jersey, and disadvantage to that was that my parents were Holocaust survivors who come to America seeking, the land paved with gold and what everyone was promised. However, we ended up in a town where anti-Semitism was like front and center. So from a very early on age, my parents were, very, strong, and they weren't religious in terms of Orthodox, but very committed to believing in God because they were saved from the Holocaust, So there was a strong sense of God and community within our home, not necessarily in our hometown, but it was an interesting lesson in the dichotomy of you're in the home with the sense of one idea, and then you are confronted with, reality, the truth, people, and bias. And in my early years, I just definitely was clear about my belief. But there was a kind of, I felt that I was beginning to assimilate from very strong Jewish background once we had kind of moved out of that town into a more traditional neighborhood where it was pretty much equal different religions. And then I just kind of felt like I wanted to be more like just everybody as opposed to just being that one kid in the town, But when I got bused to an all-black high school, that's when feeling other really was like a huge confrontation because I'd been other my whole life. So here I was trying to acclimate and fit in and then hurled into an environment where I was once again very other. And it was a real lesson in believing in yourself and your ability to just stand up for yourself and, like and the other disadvantage of at that point in my age, I was very overweight, and short, and kind of feeling those insecurities. So it was a lot to get through, until I got on the other side of it, and then what happened, my dad passed away, and that's a pretty pivotal moment in my life because we had fought the night before he died.
Oh.
I was just almost a senior in high school. I was almost graduating high school. That was May of that year. And we had a huge fight, and he died, and I never got a chance to apologize. So that was the inciting incident for the rest of the book. The book goes on to just tell the various painful traumas that I had to survive, whether it's drug addiction and finally losing all that weight and realizing that if my parents could survive the Holocaust, I could survive my own kind of worst self, And but when my father died, the way he died, I definitely stopped believing in God. That was where I said no. And first of all, if there is a God, why are there holocausts? Why are there wars? Why are there that whole philosophical approach to what is the meaning of God if you look at it in the context of a traditional God that is overlooking all of us, and it's a very judgmental kind of not helpful spirit, So I went through many years through my addictions and coming out, which was also, a huge issue in the midst of drug addiction. And again, it was the 70s, so there was so much fun and frolic and sex, joy, and things that you could kind of get yourself busy with rather than cleaning out the internal, machine to kind of make a better, healthy self. So the journey back to God was when I needed to kind of stop doing the amount of drugs I was doing. And the thing about program, which I learned a lot from, the philosophy of a 12-step program, where it's like you put your faith in a power greater than yourself, was something I could accept as opposed to just using God as this idea. Whereas the concept of believing yourself and loving yourself and the whole process and the whole journey to find spirit is just the journey to loving yourself. So it's a very internal journey as opposed to the seeking. Believe me, the whole book is about me seeking outward. But it was when I started, believing that the best of me was in my soul, that God became a very clear, comfortable kind of relationship with not only self, because it's not selfish, it's more about just pride and being able to know that, life, there's terrible days that happen, life happens, but you still have to find gratitude within every day. Even if there's nothing to somehow feel grateful about, you have to sort of find the little thing that you can latch onto, because that'll just help you get through the day. I feel like I've been up and down the mountain so many times in search of clarity and hope. It's become, almost like my second skin in a way, but it's also what I feel so proud to be able to have survived that, so that I can say that my parents did not survive the Holocaust because they've been dead for several years, but that I get to survive my own thing and know that is true. Although, believe me, I still make plenty of mistakes. And
No, not you. Really?
oh, and I will until I broke, which I hope isn't anytime soon. But there was a point in my creative journey that I wanted to write about. Once you believe in yourself enough, you're not afraid of the unknown, which is death, and that goes on in the afterlife. And when we were all confronted with our mortality when COVID lockdowns, mean, you could have died just by touching, a doorknob. You know
I
what I
know,
mean?
right?
Fear that they instilled in the world was just so incredible. But what was magical about that time was that we all, at the same moment, just about the whole world, had this like sense of mortality, which most people freaking fear are afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually embraced that moment and found that my journey didn't end being locked in. And that
Mm-hmm.
unleashed a whole new chapter in the current chapter I'm living in now
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
with that documentary, the two documentaries, and my
Yeah.
social media platform, and my whole philosophy of won't be silent, which is like,
Mm-hmm.
um, I mean, we should all just always speak out against depression and always
Mm-hmm.
you'll never go to hell for speaking up. You might get harassed, but you know what I mean? But it depends what side of the argument you're on. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm just an outspoken person anyway, and that's why I kind of am glad that life brought me to this place where won't be silent has become my moniker. It's
Mm-hmm.
a badge of honor, and it's become a community that I've built through social media
Mm-hmm.
as someone who was leading the charge in my own way through the pandemic during, from May to November in that contentious election with Trump,
Well,
galvanizing people to feel that they weren't alone in their homes, that there was like a channel that they could connect to. And that was what I was able to provide. And it was really very satisfying. It was rewarding, satisfying, and I'm so grateful that that happened.
well, you provided a home when people lost their sense of community because we were so disjointed. And those of us who were social and liked the extra contact with people, that was really, really difficult. My wife is like, bonus. I don't have to turn anything down. I don't have to go anywhere that I don't want to go. There was no pressure. She could just be
Right,
home.
right.
And so everybody handled that differently. But for you to be able to provide that sense of community and have such a welcoming spirit, I mean, that was just beautiful. And I'm sure that you saved lives because there were people who really got very suicidal and extremely depressed because they lost that connection to the energy of others.
Yeah. I especially that year, I got so many unbelievable
I
messages and
bet.
messages and emails.
Hmm.
So unexpected. Wasn't why I reached.
Right, right.
Same thing with the book. I get
Hmm.
every other day I'm getting some kind of thank you because even though it's my story and it's
Hmm.
told from a very personal, like not everyone throws themselves into the woods,
Hmm.
wolves like I do. But like this 19-year-old kid sent me a 3-minute video saying he had no reason to want to read my book because he can't get, on any level relates to me, but he was so
Hmm.
taken back by the messages and the opportunity to kind of look at his life in a completely different context. 19.
Wow.
And that was like, whoa, that was like the first response I got to the book, like right away.
Oh, wow. Such
Like,
validation.
and again, I mean, if you've written books, you know that we're not going to
Hmm.
be very fair on that. It's
No, 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 no. We'll never get back what we invested, but it was
no,
always
but
about giving instead
yeah,
of receiving. Yeah.
it's bucket list material for sure. But hopefully I'll get a chance to do another one. I'm already mapping it out, but unfortunately we got to pay bills in this
Yeah,
world.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, just life is just this incredibly challenging,
Hmm.
joyous opportunity to find your way back to self. And
Mm,
that's how I look at it.
I love that. Find your way back to self. Yeah. Well, and when you were struggling the most, you had made a statement earlier, and I wrote it down because it really impressed me. You said that you never got a chance to say goodbye to your father or to make things right. And that was a pivotal time for you because as you were a senior And
Mhm.
that was, you were just starting into your own adulthood, and you were becoming the first version of who you were going to be. And relying on a father figure, if you guys had been close at all, that's devastating. And you had also mentioned that you really tried to figure yourself out, that there were drugs and there was parties and all those types of things, which probably came a little bit later, but I guess it was all kind of at the same time too. I mean, yeah, it just all was. Um, but I was really wondering when you said that you tried to, that you had to get to the other side of that, but that was really hard, but you learned something important, in order to help you get through. And what was the thing that got you to the other side of that? What opened up your mind enough to not quit?
You know, it's almost like not having like a little bird on my shoulder all along because it wasn't there, so I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do know intrinsically, even though I can, and for those years not tap into it, is that power, that superpower that was innate in my DNA because of who my parents were, because
Mm-hmm.
my father survived the gulags in Siberia. Could you imagine? Work camps in
Mm-hmm.
Siberia. I mean, we read about them and like it's just this foreign idea of how
Mm-hmm.
people have to suffer. And my mother
Yeah.
survived Dachau, which is a whole nother kind of thing. So when you're a little kid, on Cut To, I've been hearing stories about, especially from my mom, my whole life, as just be aware that the world is out there, especially when I
Mm-hmm.
would come back and go like, how are anti-Semites outside. It was like,
Mm-hmm.
it's a superpower. It's like, actually funny. The thing is the official legal subtitle of my book, even though it won't be silent, don't stop till it matters, but legally
Mm-hmm.
it's called Embracing My Superpowers of Humor and Optimism to Survive Second Generation Holocaust, Coming Out, Addiction, and Endless Unbelievable Obstacles. You know what I
And the
mean?
publisher didn't like that?
The publisher made me do that. Because you have to do as many words that are like surgical, whatever.
I lo- I can just see my publisher going, "Really? You want us to put that whole thing on the front of your book? Really?"
No, it does legally. It doesn't have to go on the cover,
Oh,
on,
there you go.
but it has to go inside.
Okay, look at you. Good for you. I have ordered my book. I'm waiting. I can't wait to read
Okay.
it.
Oh, you should have told me. I would have sent you the PDF so you could have had
Psh,
read it.
pshaw. Someday we'll meet and you'll sign it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it has to go also where you have like the copyright information
Right,
here.
right, right. Okay,
But
okay.
and just know that for yourself. If Google searchable words is what they want.
All right.
So yeah, so it's always been there. It's like
Mm-hmm.
Dorothy and the Wizard of
Okay.
Oz. It
Click those heels, buddy.
was always there, darling.
It's always there. I love
Which,
it.
by the way, one of the best things about the review of my book from Publishers Weekly Book Life was that it acknowledges that because in my book, I mean, when I'm coming out, I'm like, it's like just watching The Wizard of Oz, even as a little kid, way before I was coming out, I was like, they're living in the barn together, those three guys, and guy at the front of, isn't that guy at the front of Emerald City like it's like sounds like a what? I was like, the whole thing is, and my best line that I think one of the best lines. There's a lot of good ones, but like I think the Annie M had an affair with who was the Wicked Witch in Kansas? What was her name? Uh,
I don't
Mrs.
remember.
Gulch.
Mm,
Elvira, Elmira Gulch.
okay.
She was a lesbian and had one fling with Annie M in high school. And then, of course, she gets normal and marries Uncle Henry. Because if you go back and you watch that movie from the context of homosexuality,
Okay.
everywhere, it's unbelievably everywhere. The entire Emerald City is a bunch of anal retentive queens.
Oh
I'm
my
telling
God, now I
you,
have to go
you
back and
watch
watch
it,
it. Now
but
I
you
gotta
have
do
to, you must rewatch it. And
Oh my
that
gosh.
scene when Elmira comes to get, I keep calling it Elvira
Uh-huh.
because, but when Elmira comes to take Toto,
Yeah.
you watch how uncomfortable Uncle Henry is because he knew about them.
Well, and so now we know the imagination that has gone into a lot of your creativity.
Reducing everything to, are they gay?
That's right. That's right.
Is
Well,
God gay? You know what I mean? It's
well,
like
I know that Jesus, I've always suspected, hanging out with 12 guys, never
100%.
officially married. His favorite beloved disciple was John.
Excuse me, and the one that unalived him was his
Yes.
lover that he ignored. They broke up, and he wasn't, and he was.
Okay.
Ah,
Ah,
ah.
okay.
Look at it from the context of like, how dare you step toss me aside, bitch.
Uh-huh.
I
Oh
mean,
my.
it's almost like the same thing with Julius Caesar. You know what I mean? Like
Oh yeah.
unrequited love. You know, they were all gay back then, walking around long skirts and whatnot.
Oh, I love this conversation so much. We had fun the other night in the readout, but this is way better because we're
No,
not.
one on one, I am like, that's my jam.
So, so with your journey of coming out, I know that one of my friends who just happens to be Jewish, he has always been so welcoming to me, and it's like never been an issue. And he's like, "Why is there an issue? What's the problem?" And I love how the Jewish people look at the scriptures and they're completely different than us evangelical ones. We like look at it and we really, think that we got to find meaning and find and it goes just read it. It's a story. It talks about God and he never has questioned where God came from or how this happened. He goes, God's God. Why do I care where he came from? It just is. So in your family, was there anyone that gave you a hard time about coming out? Were your family open to you being gay? How did that work out for you?
I mean, the truth is, my dad had died before I came out. So there's
Okay.
there's one line in the book where I'm coming out to my sisters and my mom, and I set up
Mm-hmm.
this whole sit down at a dinner, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which I said I would like nothing. I wished nothing more for my father to be alive, just not on that particular day. You know
That's right.
what
So it was
I
a
mean?
relief that you didn't have to come out to your father.
Yeah, because he was really a butch. Not after surviving the gulag,
Yeah.
right? He ended up joining the underground and was one of these superheroes that were like
Wow.
saving Jews out of Germany, and it's
Uh-huh.
just like I don't even know where that DNA. I may have the DNA of a survivor to be able to
Mm-hmm.
survive my own worst self, but I always I could never come to terms my whole life with how do you make that decision? I mean, the two things I live by now are life is choice, and that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I am my strong self, my poor strong self, but I am at my strongest and poorest coincidentally at the same time. But and neither impacts the other. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like my external world doesn't necessarily have to take away from my internal world, which I think is
Mm-hmm.
an important thing because shit happens.
Mm-hmm.
And if
Mm-hmm.
you learn how to deal with shit happening, then it all becomes just another day of what I have become accustomed to kind of surviving whatever the moment brings.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Yeah, so my mom was like, it's a phase because she was totally out to lunch anyway, as a person can be. And my sisters were like, no kidding, you know what I mean?
We knew before you did.
Right. And you know what? Years later, my mother actually told me, because my mother and I used to have these like midnight chats where I would go into her room and we would talk. She was lovely. She was such an extraordinary woman to survive that and to
Hmm.
be funny and sarcastic and just what she was just a testament to a good person. And
Hmm.
actually, you want to know something? And that is the one thing about my mom that I remember most, that she would always say, I had seen evil, and all I really wanted to do was raise good kids. Good.
Oh, uh-huh.
One of my sisters, is on the board of the Holocaust Museum in Battery Park in New York.
Oh.
They had the opening, the way you entered into this building, they had recorded all these survivors' voices. So you
Hmm.
walked into this chamber of voices, and
Hmm.
one of the voices was my mother saying, I only wanted to raise good children. And it was like, and she had just passed
Oh.
away a few months before. It was
Oh.
like, just I can be a bitch and I can be, cutting and funny and whatever, but I am a good person because that
Hmm.
was the priority of how I was to be raised. And that
Hmm.
just gets me through everything,
Hmm.
and makes it possible for me to just, not only get through my own stuff, but help others and be
Hmm.
available, and
Yep.
be a friend or
Yep.
husband, which is a whole nother story, which we don't have.
That will be the deeper. Let's go deeper with Abe and his husband.
Yeah, probably we don't want to go there either. Must we? Anyway, so yeah, so it was an easy thing to go
Hmm.
come out because although culturally it wasn't, people were just tippy toeing out. It wasn't like,
Hmm.
yeah, girl, you
Yeah.
know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Uh-uh.
Because it
Yeah.
was, 70s. And even though I was a club kid in the discos and living a different nightlife than day life, there was,
Hmm.
and it took a while to be completely gay because I was kind of, dating women early on in the game too. Once
Hmm.
I lost weight and I wasn't just like, I was kind of being, so people were attracted to me. That was also another complete other thing to get used to.
Yeah.
But
Well, I would think that as you're going through that transformation, that being neglected, or not maybe neglected, but being not appreciated when you were younger because of your weight, and girls may not have been attracted to you, to have them, that's almost like healing. You had to heal first and say, okay, now they want me, I am something. And then to find out that you always were something, and they were misguided by not seeing who you are, despite the car you were driving around yourself. It was a
yeah,
transition. Yeah.
oh, for sure, feeling, desirable. I mean, who doesn't
Yeah.
feel that? However, I do want to say my humor, like superpower, always had me connected to people,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but it was for the reasons that I found to make them want that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like my
Yeah.
humor was my badge of honor, but it was also my protective armor.
Right. Right. Yeah. And what do they say that, clowns, the clowns that make you laugh cry the most?
Right.
Because it is that way of them trying to get the attention they desire, and not feeling always worthy that they were able to get it. So,
Yeah, okay, I was a mess.
yeah. Bless your little heart. Well, weren't we all? And maybe some of us still are.
No, no, no. We all are.
That's right.
No one, and everyone has their own cross to bear. Whether you
Mm-hmm.
greatest affluent, perfect scenario, silver spoon in the ass, whatever. People needs to go through that. You can't love yourself unless you have to get through something.
Right. And you never become everything you're supposed to be if you've had a perfect life.
Right,
It
right.
is in our pain when we are I think the closest to God because we're vulnerable enough to allow God to work through us and in us.
Yeah.
You
I
know.
mean, in my book, every so often I have a letter to God,
Mm,
as that's almost the through line of the book. And it's funny because I think that's a trend now. I've seen a couple of other books and I've seen a couple of shows where they're like, "Dear God, so and so." There was actually a comedy. There was two comedies that used that in their part of the. I'll see if I can find one real quick. Okay, here's one. Dear God, you must be sick and tired of people praying to you for stuff, especially when shit gets serious. What I cannot fathom is that you let the Holocaust happen and linger on for years while millions of your loyal followers were pleading for you to put an end to the Nazi madness. If you do exist and heard their desperate cries for help, then chances are what I'm about to beg you for may also fall on deaf ear. Besides, if Genesis is true and you made man in your image, which man do you look like? You can't possibly tell me you're short, fat, and wear glasses. And if you do look like me, then how did a Robert Redford or Paul Newman happen? And since male models exist, what the fuck did you do to me and why? With that, I'm begging you to please help me look like a more desirable human being. Free me from the bondage of my height, weight, and need for eyewear. And can you please, Lord, do something about my addiction to carbohydrates? I'm going to be a senior in high school. You must do something about this before we have to take yearbook pictures. Love you.
So when you wrote that, were you was that something out of a journal, or did you just go back and write the letters to God because that's what you would have
You
said?
know
Or
what? Over the years, I've always known. I happen to have loved the book um, The Color Purple, and that was
uh-huh, uh-huh,
of that. So
yeah, yeah,
it struck me like this
mm-hmm,
whenever that book came out, when it first came out. So that always felt like a great, mechanism to
right,
show another part of you, show the
mm-hmm,
character,
mm-hmm,
feel that sensitivity, hope, you know
yep,
what I mean?
yep.
And in my case, a little humor, you know what I mean? But yeah, so when I'm gay with God, I'm not kidding. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
But there was the letter that, where I stopped believing in him and, just
Mm-hmm.
and then the letter that when I went back to believing and, because what helped me and keeps me so connected to a higher power is the idea of forgiveness. And I think that
Mm,
that's our greatest gift as
mm-hmm.
humans.
Mm-hmm.
I think the sooner we find that path to forgiveness, whether it's yourself or a loved one, or, it took me a long time to forgive myself for what I said to my dad. And it was also the reason we had the fight. He did something terrible too. So it's almost like
Mm-hmm.
I had to forgive him, I had to forgive me. I never had to forgive my mother because she was amazing. So there was never
Mm-hmm.
that kind of resentment or unsaid things because that woman could talk as much as me. You know what I mean? I thought we would have those midnight chats.
Yeah.
Um, I I'll never forget testing my ability to forgive. This is a quick little story. It's not in the book, but it should probably be in the next one. So when I was in a relationship around the time that I test positive.
Mm-hmm.
He was like a normie, never, no, not an addict or anything. I was in AA at that time, and it was a lot to go through. It
Mm-hmm.
was the early AIDS era, and people were afraid and not touching.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we ended up breaking up. which was understandable because it was a
Mm-hmm.
lot. And
Mm-hmm.
I ended up moving out and getting an apartment, and it was dramatic, I'm sure, but he ends up moving in with his new boyfriend around the corner from me. So, and they're walking a dog in front of my fucking apartment, like,
Ah,
and it was as though this heavens parted and a ray of something came on me and says, "You must forgive him now.
wow.
You're not going to survive otherwise." And it was like, it didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It was that profound
Wow.
a connection to understand that I don't have the luxury of holding on to that resentment and that, unwillingness to forgive him. Of course, I
Wow.
understood that. Nobody knew, my
Yeah.
sisters also, but even though they lived on the East Coast, but when I taste positive, I was living in California at that time also, and nobody came to see how I was doing.
None of your family came?
Nobody.
Wow.
And they're like, well, we have kids who couldn't just break it. And I said, yeah, I get that. And I forgive you, which I do, because if I could forgive him, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah.
When the thing is, it's not your garden variety situation. AIDS happened and nobody knew how
Hmm.
to deal with it. It was
Right.
like COVID, but actually worse.
Oh, yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But COVID was very close to that, you
Yeah,
know.
but the energy around COVID was different because you were targeted as a gay man that caused. Of course, gay people always get, don't we always
Turban
get,
can't
it's
win.
because of the gay people that Katrina flooded all of, New
them
Orleans.
there,
We're
them there.
so powerful, so powerful. If we would unite that power, we could really take somebody down, but that's just not our style. But
Or
but
we
that
could or we could electrify the world without having,
wouldn't it be it'd be beautiful. It'd be beautiful. So, that whole stigma around the shame of AIDS. I mean, it was just oppressive. And a lot of people didn't make it out, I think, because there was not the urgency to fix it. COVID had an urgency to fix it. And, they had ways to, well, once we got the right leadership, we had ways to do that instead of shooting light up our butts. But whatever.
which I'm sure a lot of gays are like, oh, really?
Oh, I know. Intriguing idea. What
That's
about the colors?
such
Could
a
we have
horrible
different colors?
idea, but whatever.
But that saddens me though, that your family did not show up, and that's indicative of probably a lot of things. But
And yes, and when I tell you how close I am with my sisters, because of that,
hmm
the structure of our family was very tight,
yeah,
because we were isolated all those first 11,
right,
12 years of our lives in this
yep,
town. We're still incredibly close. I just came back from 3 weeks of staying with my family and being with them every day, and they're fabulously funny and wonderful. Um, and it's in the book that I was like disappointed that
sure,
they were like, what do you mean? We were so upset. I'm like, I never knew it.
hmm
And you couldn't have shown me how you were upset. You know
hmm
what I mean? And it's not like I don't love you any less. It's just that if I was going through something, you will never understand. I don't need
right,
you to understand it. I don't want you to understand it. I just want you to let me have my own reaction to
yep,
it. I
yep,
want to be able to feel sad, you
yep,
know. I can forgive, but I can, two things can happen at the same time.
right,
And in the way I talk about it, it's like it was around that time when Lady Di went to that AIDS ward.
yeah.
There were no Lady Di, you know what I mean? And like I'm so insulted. I said, "Oh, it gives context, you know what I mean?
hmm
People
hmm
understand the time of when that happened.
right,
It's not about you not doing. I'm not like spanking you,
right,
whatever. Come on."
right, yeah.
But when you write a memoir and you include stories about your
I
family,
know. I know. I know. It was really terrifying. I told the publisher, I said, I don't when I was getting close to finishing it, I said, I don't know if I can publish it. She, excuse me? Excuse me. And I said, well, I don't want to hurt anybody. I said I wrote this authentically and I wrote it as raw as I could because that's where the truth is. I said, but I don't want anybody to be hurt by it. And I was really afraid, especially for my mom, that she would be really hurt by it. And so the way I handled that is that I I took a copy to her and I sat in the bedroom with her, and she's older. I mean, she's 90 now, but she was, 88 or something. She was close. But and so there was some confusion, a little bit of confusion, but I sat in the room with her and I told her why I wrote the book again. And I told her how important it was for me to tell her and for her to understand that I loved her. And I said, no matter what has happened in our past. I said, I know you did the best you could. It didn't always turn out right for me, but I love you and nothing will change. So I read the chapter that involves her, the Meet My Mama. And then at the end of each chapter, I did a moment of grace. And it was a way for me to reflect back from all the pain that this caused me and then to see it from their point of view and be able to return some grace. Not that it takes away the pain of all of that, not that it changes anything that I went through, but like we said earlier, what we go through creates who we need to be. And um she cried and we hugged and that kind of thing. And then her very next statement is like, but other people are going to read that about me. And I said, probably none of the friends that you have because they don't like me anyway because I'm gay. So they'll never buy this book. But that, it really did bother me to know that I held those stories my whole life, and yet now you rip yourself open and you make it public so that somebody that needs to see that and hear that will be able to have what they need to have after they've read it.
Yeah, no, it was definitely, I did not sit them down and show them what I was writing.
Oh, I didn't show them ahead of time because I knew I wouldn't have the bravery. I waited. It was after it was published, done, boom. Here's what I did. Yeah.
But family, they're just
Mm.
it's who you have, and you have to
Yep.
figure out the way to channel that. But they're also part of our teachers. It's
Yes.
and whether you take that lesson the way they want you to take it or just
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I just know that my parents and my sisters, who were like, I'm the youngest, so they were very kind of paternally, and they
Mm-hmm.
still are. Like, I still go right back into little brother mode when I come home.
Yep. Yep.
But which is fine. I'm not. What do I need to change that? I mean, it's comforting in a way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, how can people find your book?
Well, Won't Be Silent, Don't Stop Till It Matters, of course, on Amazon. It's pretty much on every website like Barnes and Noble and whatnot, but
Mm-hmm.
Amazon is where we have that. You go to my website, won'tbesilent.com. You can find a little bit more about not only the book, but if you navigate to the top of the website, you could see about the projects that I've been working on,
Mm-hmm.
which is, well, first of all, the Louder, the soundtrack of change, is going to be on Max October 17th. I don't know what
Mm-hmm.
time it is yet. I don't think they've booked the time yet. It's all happening now. Like,
Yay.
they're sending us the toolkit on how to market and promote it next week.
Uh-huh. Okay.
It's all very exciting. And it would have never happened if it wasn't for COVID.
Yep.
Period. Bar none. Um, so that's one extremely exciting project because the co-producers with me is Selena Gomez and Stacey
Oh
Abrams.
my goodness. Oh my goodness.
It's about the powerful women of protest music. It's the soundtrack of change. The whole hour is about speaking to how women's voices, which you have to understand, we sold this in 22, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the first month or two of 2023, they were like, I had pitched them actually a whole docu-series that each episode is about a different reason why people have written protest music over the years, because
Uh-huh.
there's a plethora of protest music that's been written as far back as the Revolutionary War, but we keep it in the modern 20th century. Tons. Gay rights, women's rights, environmental rights, civil rights. I mean, you name it, immigrant rights. There's tons of music for everything.
Yeah.
So it was January. It was like by February or March of 23, they said, all right, we'll do a pilot, pick an episode. And they had just turned over Roe v. Wade.
Oh,
So we said, well, this is a no-brainer.
yeah.
So now we have not only two dynamite women involved,
Mm-hmm.
as of when is a woman running for president? Oh my God. It's like kismet up the ass. You
Yeah,
know
yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
So it is such a love letter. You're going to flip when you see this
I
because
can't
as
wait.
executive producer, I get a chance to get it done. But I had no, it's not, I mean, the content, the music is research, all that stuff I did, but
Yeah.
it's done and directed and edited. That I have nothing to do with that. So it's all brilliant Emmy Award and Oscar Award winning people in doing that. But I am so proud to have my name on this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so there's that. And then the other project that I briefly want to say is that it all started even before COVID,
Mm,
which is when the Nazis were marching in Charlottesville, and that moment when
mm-hmm.
Trump was talking about, even though he denies that he said
Mm-hmm.
he said it in that context. The truth is, the Nazis were marching in Charlottesville. My parents were both dead, and I had kind of, as I mentioned, I kind of assimilated away from the religion and the traditions. And there were Nazis marching in America. I
I
was like,
know.
Lord.
Yeah.
And that became like a wake up call to me.
Mm-hmm.
And within about a month or so, we got a message from the Holocaust Museum that they found a piece of music that my uncle had written. He was a composer in a
Mm-hmm.
concentration camp, and he was killed hours before the liberation. But
Mm-hmm.
this song was actually kind of it was almost like a song of resistance to the Nazis. What
Yeah.
the song was originally titled Stay Silent, which was a silent form of protest. Don't let them take your tears. Don't let them
Mm-hmm.
take your dignity. They can't
Mm-hmm.
stop us from crying silently. Like that
Mm-hmm.
was the kind
Mm-hmm.
of, it was more like a mantra or a psalm than a
Mm-hmm.
song. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yeah.
And this guy had written a book, was looking for other survivors. Again, my uncle was killed hours before the liberation. He found someone that said, "Oh, remember that song we would sing, whatever."
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like from the ashes of the Holocaust came this message of resistance, which
Mm-hmm.
I have been a resistance addict since I'm a kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to take this and turn it into a clarion call to social justice now. And
Mm-hmm.
mix of the worst administration in our lives, and
Mm-hmm.
anger had come seeping out from the gates of hell, where the
Mm-hmm.
Gaga were like, it used. I don't have to explain it.
Yep.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then we were. I raised some money. We started taking the song. I had a Grammy Award winning songwriter. We changed the lyrics and call it Won't Be Silent because that's the way we stand up now and speak up. So that became the new song, and I had it recorded in different genres, and we had it translated to Spanish and German, and we were going all over it. It was like my idea was I didn't want to do a Holocaust film. I wanted to create the idea that through music saves the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's what helps people in the
Yep.
worst of times, like the cotton fields, the inner city
Yep.
streets, concentration camps. People
Yep.
turn to music, and that was the idea. And then COVID hit, and then we lost
Mm.
everything. So
Now,
it's
is
still,
that the video on your website? It's
yeah,
awesome.
It's great.
absolutely awesome. You guys have to go to his website and catch that video. It's
Yeah, you
amazing.
go to the website, you scroll to the top,
Hmm.
read the review of my book, and then you click to film, and you'll see the 3.5 minute sizzle reel.
Yeah.
And then when you click on music, you can see all the different versions that I've done
Hmm.
so far. And I just had it translated to Hebrew
Oh,
by,
cool.
it's unbelievable.
I bet it's beautiful.
The guy who did it lost three family members on October
Oh,
7th, and nine of his friends were kidnapped from the Nova Festival, from the Nova.
oh,
So when I met him and I was telling him about where this piece of music came from, he was like, "Can I please, translate it and record it into Hebrew?" So I literally just got that. So that's something I want to start bringing back into, like
hmm,
bringing that film back from,
hmm.
as my second
Yeah.
project. So yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And what he wants to do, because he lives in Israel, he wants to, when the war kind of ends, if ever, he wants to do Muslim, Christian, and Jewish artists to sing
Oh,
together in Jerusalem,
mm,
bring people to healing and peace. And I
that's
think
beautiful.
beautiful method of film.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
So that's the idea.
Wow, you are amazing. And you will be back because we definitely, when this thing hits max and it's out, you've got to come back and talk
I'll
about it.
come back, read the book. We can talk a little
Yes.
about
Yeah, we'll
some of the,
talk some more. Yes, of course, we'll have coffee.
yeah.
All right, my buddy. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
No,
I
thank
wish that
you.
we
It was
didn't
great.
have to cut this off because,
No. I know I
but
could go on, but
and I would sit here all the rest of today. I would sit here. I really would. But
yeah.
thank
So just
you.
just to let one last thing. TikTok, I'm on. Won't be silent. And if you on my website, you can go to all my socials. But TikTok
Yes.
is my biggest jam, and we're on the eve of the most important election once again of our lives. So
Yes.
TikTok is where we galvanize to vote. So
Yes.
catch me there.
And all of those links are going to be on the show page at empoweredmidge.podbean.com. And we hug you and we give you thanks for you. And we're so, so glad that you're
Thank
here
you.
with us and leading us in all of this worthy work. And guys, remember that you can also check out our Facebook group where we have a Gay with God group when we do a monthly Zoom group entitled My Faith Journey. And sometimes we talk about that and sometimes we talk about hot button topics and we can just go off the rails sometimes. So join the Gay with God Facebook group and come join us with that. And if you are listening to this podcast and are questioning whether you can be gay and be in a relationship with the God of your understanding, if you identify as LGBTQIA plus, or not even sure if you're gay, God has always been within you. Even when you didn't know it, you have always been gay with God. Thank you, everybody. Stay tuned to see how you can join the Gay with God community. And as always, you are
Peace.
loved. I want to invite you to become a part of the Gay with God community. How can you do that? Stay connected by messaging me your thoughts and comments in the comment section under the downloads of the show on the Gay with God show page. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen and share, share, share so we can increase our community outreach and be a light to those who are struggling to claim their faith. Consider being a sponsor so I can highlight your service in our community. We are all worthy of respect and a relationship with the God of our understanding. I want to thank you in advance for supporting this podcast. Together, we as a community will keep this show visible and our community stronger. Deep gratitude to my friend Tim McClendon of Tim McClendon Music for allowing me to use an excerpt from Interlude 4, a song found on his CD entitled Sundance.